Shattered glass. The sound of rain against the window pane should have been soothing, but for Olivia Bennet, it only emphasized the hollowness of the Manhattan apartment that no longer felt like home. She stared at the papers on the glass coffee table. Divorce papers, crisp and official, with Marcus's signature already in place. No note, no explanation. Just his signature and a sticky tab marking where she should sign. 3 years of marriage ended with the clinical precision that had made Marcus Wright one of New York's most ruthless investment bankers. Olivia's hands trembled as she picked up her phone, dialing his number for the 7th time that morning. Straight to voicemail again. "This is Marcus Wright. Leave a message." The recorded voice was as cold as the empty side of the bed she'd woken up to. "Marcus, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You can't just, we need to talk about this." "Where are you?" But she knew he wasn't coming back. The closet was half empty, his passport gone from the safe, and his assistant had already sent an email about arranging for the rest of his belongings to be collected. Marcus had planned his exit with the same meticulous attention he gave to his multi-million-dollar deals. Olivia wandered to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Central Park, pressing her palm against the cool glass. The city stretched before her, indifferent to her pain. This view had once made her feel on top of the world. Now it only reminded her how far she had to fall. Her reflection stared back. Dark circles under hazel eyes, chestnut hair pulled into a messy bun. The oversized Columbia sweatshirt she'd thrown on this morning when her world was still intact. Behind her, the apartment gleamed with all the expensive things that Marcus had insisted they needed. The modern furniture she'd never found comfortable. The abstract art she'd pretended to understand. The life that had slowly suffocated the small-town girl from Bayshore Cove. The phone rang, startling her so badly she nearly dropped it. Not Marcus, her sister Zoe. "Liv? Is everything okay? You left me a weird message." Olivia sank to the floor, back against the window. "He's gone, Zoe. Marcus is gone." The silence on the other end lasted only a second. "What do you mean, gone?" "I mean gone, left. I woke up and he wasn't here. There are divorce papers on the table." Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, detached and hollow. "Did you know our marriage was over? Because I didn't." "Oh my God, Liv." Zoe's voice softened with horror. "No warning at all?" Olivia laughed bitterly. "Unless you count how he stopped coming home for dinner. Or how he hasn't touched me in months." She closed her eyes, remembering how Marcus had kissed her forehead absently last night before turning away in bed. Had he already known it would be the last time? "I'm booking a flight right now," Zoe said, determination replacing shock. "Don't sign anything until I get there." "Don't," Olivia said, surprising herself with the sudden clarity. "I don't want to be here when his people come for his things." "Then come home," Zoe said simply. "Come back to Bayshore. The cottage is still empty. Has been since Grand passed. The key's where it always was." Olivia stared at the divorce papers, the Manhattan skyline, the life she'd molded herself into for a man who had discarded her without a backward glance. Marcus had swept into her life during her final year of culinary school, dazzling her with his confidence and intensity. Somewhere between the whirlwind romance and the lavish wedding, she'd lost pieces of herself. Her dreams of opening her own cafe. The cooking that had once been her passion. The simple joys that had defined her before becoming Mrs. Marcus Wright. "Maybe I will," she whispered, feeling something stir inside her chest. Not healing, not yet, but perhaps the first recognition that there might be a life beyond this moment. Maybe it's time to go home. Salt and sugar. The morning sunlight streamed through the wide windows of Shoreline Cafe, casting golden patterns across the polished wooden countertops. Olivia wiped her hands on her apron and stepped back to admire the display case she'd just finished arranging. Flaky sea salt caramels, lavender shortbread, and her signature ocean blue macarons that had become a local favorite. "Those look too pretty to eat," called Daphne, her silver-haired assistant, who had once been her grandmother's best friend. "But I bet old Mrs. Calloway will demolish at least 3 when she comes for her afternoon tea." Olivia laughed, the sound easy and genuine, something that still occasionally surprised her. That's why I always set aside a box for her. 2 years in and I've learned all the locals' favorites. 2 years. Sometimes it felt like yesterday that she'd arrived in Bayshore Cove, hollow-eyed and heartbroken, with nothing but a suitcase and the shattered remains of her confidence. Her grandmother's old seaside cottage had been musty and neglected, much like the small cafe that had been left to Olivia in her will. The cafe had been on the verge of closing, its outdated menu and faded decor unable to compete with the newer establishments along the boardwalk. But Olivia had found unexpected salvation in its resurrection. Every hour spent repainting walls, updating recipes, and learning the business side of running a cafe had been an hour not spent dwelling on Marcus and the life she'd lost. Now, Shoreline Cafe was the heart of Bayshore Cove, a warm, inviting space where locals gathered for Olivia's innovative pastries that blended her formal culinary training with the comfort of hometown traditions. The cafe's success had healed more than her bank account. It had restored her sense of purpose. The bell above the door chimed, and Olivia looked up to see Mayor Jenkins entering with a concerned expression that immediately set her on edge. "Morning, Mayor. Coffee's fresh," she said, already reaching for his usual mug, black, 2 sugars. "Thanks, Liv." He accepted the coffee but didn't take his usual seat at the counter. "Got a minute? There's something happening that affects all the waterfront businesses." Olivia wiped her hands again, nodding to Daphne to take over. She led Mayor Jenkins to a quiet corner table by the window overlooking the harbor. "What's going on?" "Development proposal." He pulled out a glossy folder and slid it across the table. "Big one. Luxury resort, condos, complete renovation of the pier and marina." Olivia opened the folder, her stomach tightening at the slick renderings of modern glass buildings that looked utterly alien against Bayshore's weathered charm. This would change everything about the town. That's what they're counting on. The company's calling it revitalization, claiming it'll bring jobs, tourism, tax revenue. Mayor Jenkins sighed. Council split. Some see dollar signs, others worry about losing our character. Olivia studied the proposal. "Right Capital Ventures," she read, her blood suddenly running cold. She looked up sharply. "Right, as in—" Mayor Jenkins nodded grimly. "Their advance team arrives next week to begin community outreach. The CEO himself is supposedly coming to make the pitch personally at the town hall meeting." The coffee mug trembled slightly in Olivia's hands. "Marcus Wright? You've heard of him?" The mayor looked impressed. "Guy's got quite a reputation in development circles. Ruthless but effective." Olivia set down her mug carefully, hoping the mayor couldn't see how badly her hands were shaking. "You could say that." After the mayor left, Olivia locked herself in the small office behind the kitchen, pulling up her laptop with unsteady fingers. She hadn't searched Marcus's name in over a year, a hard-won victory in her recovery. Now she typed it with a sense of inevitability. There he was, Marcus Wright, looking even more polished and successful than when she'd last seen him. Recent photos showed him at charity galas, business awards, standing confidently in front of sleek skyscrapers that bore his company's name. The business press hailed him as a visionary who transformed struggling communities into luxury destinations. Transformed, or destroyed, depending on who you asked. Olivia closed the laptop and pressed her palms against her eyes. 2 years of building a new life, of finding peace, of finally sleeping through the night, without waking up reaching for someone who wasn't there. And now Marcus was about to walk back into her world like a hurricane making landfall. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd fled New York because she couldn't bear to be in the same city as him, only for him to follow her here. Not for her, of course, but for another conquest. Another place to remake in his image of success. Daphne knocked softly before poking her head in. "Everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Olivia lowered her hands and straightened her shoulders. "Something like that," she said, managing a thin smile. "But ghosts can't hurt you unless you let them, right?" She returned to the front of the cafe with renewed determination. She'd rebuilt herself once after Marcus Wright had shattered her world. She'd be damned if she'd let him destroy what she'd created here in Bayshore Cove. This time she wouldn't be the one left behind with nothing but paperwork and silence. This time she would fight. Storm warning. The town hall was packed beyond capacity, folding chairs hastily arranged in every available space. Olivia sat in the front row beside Daphne, her heart hammering against her ribs as Mayor Jenkins called the meeting to order. As you all know, we're here to discuss the proposed Bayshore Harbor Resort and Marina, the mayor began, gesturing to the elaborate model displayed on a table at the front of the room. We're honored to have Mr. Marcus Wright himself here to present the vision for this project. And then there he was, striding to the podium with the confident grace that had once made Olivia's heart race for entirely different reasons. Marcus looked exactly as she remembered, yet somehow more polished in his tailored navy suit, more commanding in his posture, more distant in the cool assurance of his smile. His dark hair was cut shorter now, emphasizing the sharp angles of his jawline. "Thank you, Mayor Jenkins," Marcus began, his deep voice filling the room. "I appreciate the opportunity to share our vision for transforming Bayshore Cove into a premier coastal destination." Olivia watched him launch into his well-rehearsed presentation, displaying renderings and statistics with practiced charm. This was the Marcus she recognized, brilliantly persuasive, making promises of economic prosperity that had the council members nodding along eagerly. He'd always been able to sell a vision, to make people believe that what benefited Marcus Wright would inevitably benefit them too. The existing businesses along Harbor Street would be relocated to our new artisan marketplace, Marcus was saying, creating a centralized shopping experience that would drive significantly more tourist traffic to local vendors. Olivia couldn't stay silent any longer. She stood, raising her hand high. Mayor Jenkins nodded to her. "Olivia Bennett, owner of Shoreline Cafe." For the first time, Marcus faltered. His eyes locked with hers, a flash of shock breaking through his professional veneer before he quickly composed himself. If she hadn't been watching so closely, she might have missed it entirely. "Mr. Wright," she said, her voice steadier than she felt, "your renderings show a curated food court where my cafe currently stands. Are you suggesting that businesses like mine would be demolished or forced to relocate?" Marcus recovered quickly, offering her a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Bennett, I assure you that local businesses are central to our vision. The new marketplace would offer improved facilities, better visibility, and protection from the seasonal fluctuations that currently impact waterfront businesses." "Protection?" Olivia challenged. "Or control? Your proposal states that relocated businesses would pay rent to Wright Capital Ventures rather than owning their own spaces. That's not protection. That's dependency." A murmur ran through the crowd as Marcus's smile tightened. The trade-off for reduced property responsibility would be significantly increased foot traffic and modernized facilities. Most business owners would see this as an opportunity. "Most business owners weren't being asked to surrender the buildings that have been in their families for generations," Olivia countered. "This isn't revitalization, it's erasure." The meeting devolved into heated debate after that, with townspeople lining up to voice concerns or support. Throughout it all, Olivia felt Marcus's gaze repeatedly returning to her, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. When the mayor finally called a recess, she slipped out a side door, needing air and distance. The cool evening breeze off the harbor helped calm her racing pulse as she leaned against the weathered railing overlooking the water. The old wooden pier, the one Marcus planned to replace with a gleaming marina, stretched into the darkness, strung with the simple white lights that made it magical on summer evenings. "It's beautiful," said a voice behind her. "In its own way." She didn't turn. She didn't need to. "What are you doing here, Marcus?" He moved to stand beside her, maintaining a careful distance. "Officially? Developing a resort. And unofficially?" Olivia finally looked at him, hating the way her heart still responded to his proximity, even after everything. Marcus studied her face, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "I didn't know you lived here." "Would it have mattered if you did?" He didn't answer immediately. "You've changed," he said finally. "That's what happens when someone breaks you," she replied, her voice low. "You either stay broken or you rebuild yourself into something stronger." The silence stretched between them, filled with the sound of waves lapping against the shore and distant laughter from the meeting hall. "Olivia," he began. "Don't," she cut him off. "Whatever you're about to say, an explanation, an apology, a business proposal, save it. You lost the right to my time when you walked out without a word." She pushed away from the railing, turning to face him fully. "Stay away from me, Marcus. And stay away from my cafe. This town isn't another one of your conquests." As she walked away, she felt his eyes following her, and for the first time since he'd left her, Olivia felt a flicker of power. He might still have the resources and the influence, but this was her home now, her life, her terms, and this time, she wouldn't be the one left speechless. Rebuilding Bridges' rain drummed against the cafe windows as Olivia counted out the register after closing. The week since the town meeting had been a whirlwind, organizing the Harbor Street business owners into a coalition, researching zoning laws, and fielding constant questions from concerned townspeople. She'd barely had time to process the emotional upheaval of seeing Marcus again. The knock at the front door startled her. Through the rain-streaked glass, she could make out a familiar silhouette. Marcus, standing in the downpour without an umbrella. Against her better judgment, she unlocked the door. "We're closed." "I know." Water dripped from his hair onto his shoulders. "I need to talk to you. Not about the development." Olivia hesitated, then stepped aside. 5 minutes. Marcus entered, bringing the smell of rain and expensive cologne. He looked different in casual clothes, dark jeans and a gray sweater that reminded her of nights in their apartment before ambition had consumed him completely. "You're drenched," she said, retrieving a clean towel from behind the counter. He accepted it with a nod of thanks. The forecast didn't mention a monsoon. An awkward silence fell as he dried his hair. Olivia busied herself making coffee, needing something to do with her hands. "You've done amazing things here," Marcus finally said, looking around the cafe. "It feels like you." That was the point. Olivia set a mug in front of him. "When someone erases you from your own life, you have to redefine yourself." Marcus winced. "I deserve that." "You deserve worse." She leaned against the counter, maintaining her distance. "What do you want, Marcus?" He wrapped his hands around the mug, staring into the coffee as if it held answers. "To explain. Not to excuse what I did, there's no excuse. But you deserve to know why." 2 years too late," she said quietly. "I know." He met her eyes, and the raw regret she saw there caught her off guard. "I was drowning, Liv. The Right Capital merger was going to fail unless I secured the overseas investors. I had to choose between our marriage and everything I'd built professionally." "You didn't have to choose," Olivia countered. "You chose not to include me in the decision. You chose to walk away without even saying goodbye." "Because I knew if I looked you in the eyes, I wouldn't be able to do it." His voice roughened. "And I was a coward who convinced himself it was kinder to make a clean break than drag you through months of fights and false hopes." Olivia shook her head, anger flaring. "Don't you dare call abandonment kindness. You didn't even give me the dignity of a conversation." "You're right." Marcus set down his mug untouched. "It was the biggest mistake of my life. Not just leaving, but how I left. I've regretted it every day since." "Yet you never reached out. Not once." "By the time I realized what I'd thrown away, I thought it was too late." His eyes held hers. "You disappeared. Changed your number, left social media. I convinced myself you were better off without me crashing back into your life." The rain intensified, cascading down the windows in sheets. Olivia struggled to reconcile this vulnerable version of Marcus with both the man who'd abandoned her and the ruthless developer who'd presented at the town meeting. "Why are you telling me this now? Because seeing you at that meeting, so strong, so sure of yourself, I realized I never really knew you." A sad smile touched his lips. "The woman I married would never have stood up to me like that. But maybe that's because I never gave her the chance." Olivia felt a dangerous softening inside her chest and stepped back, rebuilding her walls. "This changes nothing about your development plans." "Actually, it does." Marcus reached into his jacket, retrieving a folded document. "Our team has drafted a revised proposal. Smaller footprint, preservation of all existing Harbor Street buildings, community ownership of the marketplace. Olivia accepted the document cautiously. Why the sudden change of heart? I came to Bayshore with one vision. Then I saw what this place means to you, to everyone here. He ran a hand through his damp hair. I still believe in development, but it doesn't have to come at the cost of erasing what makes this place special. She studied him, searching for the manipulation behind his words. And this has nothing to do with trying to get back in my good graces? After the storm. The annual Bayshore Summer Festival transformed the waterfront into a tapestry of lights, music, and laughter. Olivia moved through the crowd, greeting neighbors and sampling offerings from other local food vendors. Her stand, featuring ocean-themed desserts, had sold out hours earlier. 3 months had passed since the night Marcus had appeared at her cafe in the rain. 3 months of cautious negotiations between the town council and Wright Capital, of revised plans and community forums. 3 months of carefully navigating a fragile new relationship with the man who had once shattered her world. They weren't dating, not exactly. But the walls between them had gradually lowered. Coffee meetings to discuss the development had evolved into walks along the shore, conversations that stretched late into the evening, and a slow rebuilding of trust neither had expected. Olivia found herself at the end of the old pier, away from the festival's noise. The sunset painted the horizon in shades of amber and rose, reflecting off the calm water. I thought I might find you here, Marcus said, approaching with 2 cups of lemonade. You always did seek out quiet in the middle of chaos. She accepted the drink with a smile. Some things don't change, and some things do. He gestured toward the harbor, where construction had begun on the scaled-back marina, designed now to complement rather than replace the existing character of the town. The council approved the final amendments today. I heard, Olivia said. Congratulations. It's a far cry from the original glass monstrosity you proposed, Marcus chuckled. Best compromise I've ever made. His expression grew serious. Both professionally and personally. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the festival lights reflect on the water. In the distance, someone released paper lanterns that drifted lazily into the darkening sky. I'm leaving tomorrow, Marcus said finally. The Boston project needs my attention, and Ryan can handle things here. Something tightened in Olivia's chest. For how long? A few weeks, maybe longer. He turned to face her. Unless I have a reason to come back sooner. The implication hung between them, charged with possibility. Olivia studied his face, remembering all the pain, but also the healing of recent months. The Marcus before her wasn't the same man who had walked away, just as she wasn't the same woman he'd left behind. What are you asking, Marcus? I'm asking if there's still a chance for us. His voice was quiet but steady. Not to go back to what we were. That relationship was broken long before I left. But something new. Something built on who we are now. Olivia thought of all the reasons to say no. The risk of being hurt again. The complications of his life in Boston and hers in Bayshore. The whispers of friends who warned her against trusting him. But she also thought of the man who had spent weeks volunteering at the town's beach cleanup, who had modified million-dollar plans based on the concerns of small business owners, who had finally given her the honesty she deserved, however delayed. I'm not moving back to Boston, she said firmly. My life is here now. I know, Marcus nodded. I'm not asking you to. Actually, he hesitated. I've been considering opening a regional office here. The East Coast development market is shifting towards smaller communities. Olivia raised an eyebrow. Convenient timing. Convenient doesn't mean insincere. He took her hand, his touch careful, questioning. I lost you once because I put my ambition before everything else. I'm not making that mistake again. A burst of laughter from the festival drifted across the water. Olivia looked back toward the town, her home, her sanctuary after heartbreak, the place where she'd found herself again. Then she looked at Marcus, seeing both the shadows of their past and the possibility of a future neither had imagined. We'd need to take it slow, she said finally. Very slow. The hope that brightened his eyes made her heart skip. I can do slow. And there would have to be rules. Complete honesty, no disappearing acts. If something's wrong, we talk about it no matter how hard. Marcus nodded, squeezing her hand gently. Anything else? Olivia smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Yes, you should know I'm no longer the woman who will reshape her dreams to fit yours. If this happens, it's a partnership of equals. I wouldn't want it any other way. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face with a tenderness that made her breath catch. You rebuilt yourself into someone extraordinary, Olivia Bennett. I'd be a fool to ask for anything less. As the first stars appeared in the twilight sky, Olivia made her choice. She leaned forward and kissed him, not with the desperate passion of their past, but with the measured promise of their possible future. A kiss that acknowledged both the pain they'd survived and the healing they'd begun. When they finally parted, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. Does this mean you'll give me a reason to come back sooner? Olivia laughed softly, the sound carrying across the water. I think Bayshore might have room for one more permanent resident, assuming he understands that some developments take time. Time, Marcus repeated, drawing her closer as they watched the lanterns disappear into the night sky. That's one investment I'm happy to make. Behind them, the festival continued, a celebration of community and resilience. Before them stretched the ocean and infinite possibilities, and between them, the understanding that some journeys end exactly where they need to begin, with a second chance neither had expected to find.